So good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Janaka Lewis, and I'm Director of Women and Gender Studies here at UNC Charlotte, and also Interim Director of the Center for the Study of the New South. And it is my pleasure to be part of this summit today. Thank you all. We have a distinguished group of panelists today, and we want to get into their conversations. But first, I wanted to introduce each of them, and there's lots of information that they're here to share with us today. So first, this is Angela Woods. Angela Woods, JD, brings over 20 years of combined for-profit and not-for-profit leadership experience to the Cross North School and Children's Home. As Chief Operating Officer, she oversees Cross North's day-to-day business operations, including finance, human resources, technology, and facilities. Prior to this appointment, she served as the CEO of Girl Scouts Hornets Nest Council, which is the largest girls leadership organization in the Charlotte metro region. And her name sounds familiar because she has been a close friend and partner of the Women and Girls Research Alliance. Prior to Hornets Nest Council, she was also the CEO of the Girl Scouts Heart of the South in Memphis, and interim CEO, COO of United Way of the National Capital Area, Washington, DC. So welcome to Mrs. Angela Woods. And next, we have Maghan Knight, who is the Council Director of the Girls on the Run Greater Charlotte, which is a nonprofit organization that aims to inspire girls to live joyful, healthy, and confident lives. Maghan received her BS in International Health from Clemson University and has spent the past 8 years working with youth, serving nonprofit organizations. Her work with the Foundation for International Medical Relief of Children based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, allowed her to support health improvement programs in Africa, Asia, and the Americas. Since 2017, Maghan has called Charlotte, North Carolina home and has been devoted to empowering young women in her community through her work with Girls on the Run. Welcome to Ms. Maghan Knight. And last but not least, we have Ms. Tiffany Allen, who is the visionary leader behind Empowerment's Rapid Growth and Deep Impact. Empowerment is a nonprofit organization that exists to increase the pipeline of future female talent. Tiffany has been working with Empowerment since 2013 as the Director of Operations. In 2018, she was promoted to become the nonprofit organization's first ever Executive Director. Her success was promoted to become, her success and private sector experience and project management skills. Before joining Empowerment, she previously served as the program director of the Center for Community Transitions Women's Transitional Facility Program in Charlotte, North Carolina. So welcome to Ms. Tiffany Allen. And so today we're here to talk about the state of Black girls, the state of girls, and also thinking about particular resources and needs of girls in underserved organizations as well, and underserved communities. And first I want to ask each of our panelists to talk about what are some of the issues that they see in your particular organizations. What are some of the primary issues that stand out when we think about the state of Black girls and the state of girls? First with Angela Woods.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. I think, and probably the panelists would agree with me, what's really the number one issue that we're seeing with girls, and in particular girls of color, is the mental health trauma that has not been, it's only worsened with the pandemic, but it certainly has been an issue for quite some time. And so with the pandemic, you're seeing certainly an increase in behaviors, not only that exist in school, but what's happening in their home life and that stress. So I would say, you know, the real keen focus of supporting our girls if it's for their mental health.
Totally agree with you, Angela. As the girls and our boys have seen so much unfold over the past year, the pandemic, Black Lives Matter, the election cycle, it has definitely taken a toll on them. And at Empowerment, we've shifted our Leadership Academy curriculum to solely concentrate on mental wellness for the past couple of months. The kids have expressed the need to wanting to learn how to cope through these difficult times, as well as help friends and family members out, and then just have their own skills and their own personal toolkit to be able to recognize when themselves are not well or need to seek additional resources or help. So totally agree with you that mental wellness has been a highlight, if I can say that, in this past year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you both, Tiffany and Angela. We've even had to shift our coach training. So the coaches that are implementing the Girls on the Run curriculum, the conversations that the coaches are now having are different because of the impact of COVID. The girls are feeling more isolated. You know, they're separated from their peers and from their educators. And so we had to quickly not only shift our curriculum, but shift the way that we were training coaches so that they were prepared to have those conversations with girls. And so glad that we were still able to meet girls both virtually and in person, but it's looked a lot different this season and in the fall.
Thanks to each of you. And I want to expand more on the idea of these mental health challenges that are coming. How are you able to identify those, and what are the resources that you're finding to respond to them?
We've actually just listened to the girls, right? They have reached out to us via social media, email, conversation with parents, and we really took that to heart to say, hey, there's a crisis going on that hadn't been talked about publicly, as the school systems have been challenged themselves trying to figure out what that looks like, what remote learning or hybrid learning looks like. And so we just really had to take a cue from the girls and change how we provided our curriculum and really serve them and meet them where they are currently.
And I would add to Tiffany's point, in my former life as in the Girl Scout world, we really relied on girls and their parents and their volunteers to lift those issues as they were meeting. In my current role, we really are focused on foster care children and their residential. We have more of a keen eye in terms of what's happening to them from a trauma-based perspective. And I would say from a resources perspective, because they are in that, for lack of a better word, bubble, we've got targeted support and clinical support. But you know, if you take that and you move that out to the community, it is really almost self-identification in many cases, and then really helping the parents and volunteers and their support system tie into what the resources that may or may not be available to them once they've been identified.
And similarly, Tiffany, we rely so heavily on our coaches and our mentors to really identify issues that the girls are going through and help supporting them in that. I will say at Girls on the Run, we were really, really lucky in that a lot of the lessons that are built into our curriculum are more important than ever before. And so there are actual lessons that teach girls how to manage their emotions. We have one that's called Stop and Take a Breather. And so the girls get to learn strategies to manage their stress levels. They are learning strategies about how to communicate better with their friends and families and coaches, communicating things that they need, communicating support that they need. And so I think one of the most important things and most important decision that I made is not to stop programming. We just found a different way to deliver it. And I'm so glad that we're giving girls the opportunity to participate in the lessons and have that safe space and conversations. Many of our girls that were participating in remote learning, their ability to come to an in-person Girls on the Run session twice per week was a lifeline for them. So really glad that we were still able to provide that.
Thank you all. And Maghan, you speak to this very important point of the spaces that are enabled through in-person. And we know that everything hasn't been able to be held in person. And so for each of you, how have you identified ways to kind of fill in gaps, especially through this last year? How have those needs come to light, and what have you been able to do in terms of responding, whether you're in person or virtual?
It was important for us to offer both in-person and virtual opportunities. To your point, Tiffany, meeting girls where they are. As we were listening to parents, we had some telling us, we want to keep our children at home. We want to stay virtual. So we made sure that we adapted our curriculum to be developed or delivered virtually. First time Girls on the Run has ever gone virtual before, but we felt like it was important that we made that an opportunity for our girls. And then for the in-person lessons, we got really creative. So we held Girls on the Run at a shopping center for the first time. We held Girls on the Run at a running store. We tried to find a way to, add meeting places for Girls on the Run across the 6 counties that we serve. We certainly were not able to get into every neighborhood. We, of course, realized very quickly how important our school partners are to the success of reaching all girls. But we certainly did our best to get creative with offering both in-person and virtual. And that was really well received, that we put a variety of options out there.
We relied heavily on creativity too, Megan. We utilize a text system where we text our girls and they're able to text back. We've mailed out postcards, personalized messages, and then just virtually, we have met on every platform known to man across the span, so the girls can get used to Zoom, Google Hangout, Microsoft Teams, and we've begun to offer opportunities to connect outside of the weekend. So after school on Sunday nights or Sunday afternoons. And that also gave us a chance to connect with women across the globe. And so having opportunities to be virtual, allow girls to meet other girls across the country, as well as women across the globe on different topics and different passions and interests. And so we've gotten creative, but we've stayed virtual the past year.
Ditto to everything that Megan and Tiffany said. I think the challenge for us, and what continues to be the challenge, is to try to develop trust virtually, right? It's very difficult to do 75,000 Zooms a day, if they're in school, and then to create that authentic space and trusting space in, an hour or 30 minutes, because you are battling against time and attention. And coupling that with, some intentionality and authenticity and all of those things. And so it continues to be a challenge. I think it will continue to be a challenge as we begin to talk more about how do we get under the issues around mental health and this whole concept of resiliency, which may be a misnomer. I think sometimes we just think that girls are just going to be resilient. Well, that's not the case. And so that becomes a challenge, I think, in a virtual environment. But I think as not only are we programmed to girls and to children who identify as girls, it's important to program and partner with their parents and caretakers to have them understand why this conversation is so important and why this virtual space is so important, and to work and partner with them to help create some form of safety and some form of trust, which is difficult to do.
And that is difficult to do virtually. When we moved to meeting virtually, we was trying to do business as usual, but then we had to stop because it may have been someone that needed to make a comment or share something. And so now we've embedded, just in the beginning, checking in. How are you? What's going on with you? What are your wins? What are your losses? And so having those types of vulnerable moments in the beginning, and even at the end, after, being online for 30 or 45 minutes, like, how's it going? Are you still good? Tell us what you need. And, so we had to do that, and to let them know it's okay to have your camera off sometimes. It's okay if, right? It's okay if you don't want to be seen. We know that you're there. Like, tell us in the chat box. But we did have to just implement, not business as usual, but some check-in points in the beginning and the end of our sessions.
Thank you. And it's so important that you said that, this idea of not just business as usual, because we know that for many of our girls, it's not business as usual, prior to pandemic, et cetera. And so I want to build on this idea of how safety and community are created. Angela, I think it's so important that you talked about safety. How are these created within your organizations? But what have you drawn on even before the pandemic, that built these spaces of community and of trust?
Well, I think, if I talk about my current position, safety and creating safety is everything, because many of our children, 53% of our children that we serve are girls, or are children who identify as girls. It is so, and they come from trauma. And so that's a whole different level in space that you got to reestablish trust, which you may not always get, right? And I think, as an organization like Girl Scouts, because you are not with a girl all day long, every day, it's important to, I think, acknowledge that, what does a safe space look like for you, to really not just rush to say, oh, we're in a safe space, but what, to really verbalize with girls and with families about what does that mean? What does it mean in a virtual space? And to really start to pull that out so that you can sort of create that. And if you have to do it virtually, Tiffany brings up a great point. You don't have to be on camera. You have a choice. How are you feeling? If you're not feeling, one of the things that my current organization does really well is that we ask every meeting we have, how are you feeling today? And then they ask, do you need someone to check in with you, right? And so as I think, as adopting these types of things are going to be important going forward. Pandemic or no pandemic, I think how we relate to each other, how we relate to girls, and in particular girls of color, is going to be really important, that we start to really get to the authentic answers.
And kind of going back to the coach training that we put our volunteers through, so much of their role as the coach is creating the safe space for the girls. So of course it's on me to find a safe physical location for the team to meet. But we have about 4 hours of training that our coaches go through, and only about 1 of those hours are we actually diving into the curriculum. We have modules that are all about building coach to girl relationships. We work with the coaches on how they can strengthen girl to girl relationships. We know that our coaches, especially those that are working with girls in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they're going to have difficult conversations, and sensitive topics are going to come up. And so we really focus on all of the aspects that make the girls in their own curriculum come to life. And one of those is building those relationships, creating the safe spaces, focusing on the language you're using, focusing on all of the small things that give the girls a sense of belonging, or maybe, you may be doing something that gives the girl the sense that she doesn't belong. So those are all things that we're trying to address with the coaches, and send them forth and hope that they are able to implement the curriculum in a way that all girls are able to feel safe and included.
We've done the same, Megan, in regards to our mentors. Our mentors are strong women, and they too experienced the pandemic. And so we've armed them with resources as well as future training in mental CPR. We just recognize that, in order to look out for someone else, you have to look out for you as well. And to be able to be a good, strong support for a girl, we want the mentor to be just as whole and as well as can be. And so we're in the process of doing that, but we have armed our mentors with just the resources and the connections and the communication lines for them to reach back out to our mentoring manager and team on any red flags that they've seen with the girls or with their families.
Thank you, absolutely. And as Elaine Jacobs reminds us to put any questions for the panel in the chat so we can make sure those are answered. And thank you to everyone for attending. So let's continue on this idea of who the partners are in supporting our girls. And also, I didn't have to ask this at the beginning, who are our girls? Who are our girls as defined by your organizations? Who are our girls, and who are the partners that are supporting in this work?
So, I mean, to me, any girl or any child that identifies as a girl is our girl, right? And I think, and in particular, as you mentioned, Dr. Lewis, it is so critical. And Charlotte, is a wealth of resources, but we don't necessarily always utilize or know to utilize and collaborate effectively, particularly around the issues of girls. in that space. But I can say I'm extremely proud of the work that I see that's happening in empowerment and Girls on the Run and Circle of Lose and you know, at the YWCA, without that leadership and the collaboration. Oh, I forgot to say Girl Scouts and Girl Scouts as well. Without without the leadership really understanding that no one organization can serve girls. We all have different kind of ways of serving girls, and we may have different expertise and different trust levels based on what the neighborhoods are and the relationships are. I think we have to present a holistic picture to girls. So number one, that they begin to trust us and their families begin to trust us. Number two, that we identify all the girls and not just some of the girls. And then number three, really to be culturally competent and inclusive in our approach. And, not about what we think is best for girls, but what is it that they need and how do we program to that? So that's what I would offer.
Dr. Lewis, Girls on the Run, currently, who we define as our participants, we offer programming for 3rd through 5th grade girls, and we've been offering that program now for about 25 years. It's our birthday this year. And then we've been offering middle school programming for about 10 years now. And then we also offer the opportunity for high schoolers to coach Girls on the Run. So we say we hope that our girls will grow up GOATer. We hope that they will go through all elementary, middle school with us, and then come back and serve in a leadership capacity with the organization as a coach and develop in that way.
Empowerment is open to middle and high school girls. Our mentorship program is centered around mainly high school girls. We partner a girl in her 9th grade year with a mentor, and we hope for the next 4 years that they're able to work together to define, develop, and defend her voice as a leader. Each girl, and even our middle school girls, we organically pair them with women and with hopes that they will continue on with empowerment through their high school years. And every girl is exposed to great women, great opportunity, experiences. Our demographic is mainly Black and brown girls, but it's for any girl that has a desire to become a leader, any girl that is identified through her school, her family, a neighbor, that there's something in her that needs to be sparked, and empowerment can help her light that spark. And so that is why we exist, and those are the girls that we serve.
Great, and I love that we have this range of experiences and girls who are included on this panel, but in the Charlotte community in general. There's a question of how you incorporate or address the influences of social media. Tiffany, if you're going to start, I see you smiling there.
Social media is a part of the youth lives, like there's no way around it. And so we have taken advantage of the fact that the girls aspire to be social media influencers. And we've connected with those folks, those bloggers, those vloggers, to share with the girls their experience, how they got into that opportunity. And we've also shared the downside or the negative side of social media as well. From the bullying to the aggressiveness to the predators, we've discussed that and let them know that social media is not all shiny and beautiful as it appears. There's some very dark sides. And so we've had some open conversation about social media, but we always leave the girls with social media can definitely help you if you play it right, if you do it right. It is a trail, a paper trail, electronic trail of who you are, and you want it to represent the best of you. And so that social media is a part of our curriculum that we dive into on a regular basis with our mentees.
We're certainly seeing it become a little bit more of an issue at some of our Girls on the Run practices. So hopefully the 1 hour and 30 minutes that the girls are with us is a phone-free time, but we still are having some conversations around social media and really the portrayal of girls and women in the media in general. So there's actually one lesson that we incorporate where, we're taking a look at magazines, at advertisements, at various things that are put out in the world, and having conversations about how that makes girls feel. The positives that we're seeing in the media, but also things that are detrimental. And more conversations now are of course being had around girls seeing things that are not necessarily real, right? We're all stuck at home. We're seeing, some folks on social media having fun and doing things that some of us are not able to do. And I think that that's having an impact on the girls as we're trying to move towards getting back to normal. So again, there's some positives there, some negatives, and I think just having really open and honest conversations with the girls is important.
Kudos to everything that was just said. I mean, social media, I have a 20-year-old who lives and dies by social media. Social media, in my view, is a blessing and a curse, particularly as it relates to girls. I'm going to default to the side of safety. I'm most concerned about how girls have access, because all girls really do have access. If they don't have anything else, they have access to a phone, and they have access to get to Instagram and probably don't use Facebook, but let's just go with Instagram and Twitter and all the other stuff that they use. Snapchat, sorry. And I think, one of the things that is really, really critical for us and as parents, as caretakers, is to be really, to try to be as knowledgeable as possible, because what we're seeing, at least from the organization that I now represent, the increase in trafficking is off the charts. And a lot of it's not just going to the mall and getting picked up by somebody. Trafficking starts in phones, and it starts with meetups, and it starts with catfishing, and it starts with girls seeing something on social media, going to sites like OnlyFans and thinking that that's the way for them to make money. And this is happening to young girls, not just older girls. And I think as organizations that support girls, we just have to educate ourselves and try to keep up with the trends, but also be really cognizant that social media is a burgeoning place that people can reach out and touch you, and can connect with girls in a way that we don't need them to be connected with.
Thank you all. And I kept saying the state of Black girls in the beginning, because that's my research right now on representations of Black girlhood and narratives, and dealing with a lot of the vulnerability and the needs for protection that are represented in a lot of those narratives. And the next question is related. Melba Palo Santos de Marquez asked, it seems as though, in my opinion, girls are losing their innocence at a younger age. So, I used to think about playing with dolls and even dress. Have you worked to address this idea, which might also be connected to the social media influence?
I think you have to acknowledge that it needs to be addressed. It's not just, hey, we're going to show you all these positive images, and hey, you have to acknowledge that it's there. As a caretaker, as a parent, as a leader, you have to acknowledge it, and where is that coming from? And then I think, at least in Girl Scout space and in Cross North space, it is about, you as a leader, you as a role model. What are you representing? What are you saying to your daughter? What are you saying to your mentee? And having open and honest conversations. Again, if I go back to the social media aspect, it is open. It is open technology. Everybody has access to it, and everybody is not monitored on it. And so you have to assume that your children are going to be exposed to it. You may not think they're being exposed to it in your home, but I guarantee you they're being exposed to it somewhere. And I think as a parent, it's important to acknowledge it, not to shame or blame girls around it, but to really talk to them about the realities and the safety, and to really focus on their self-esteem and help them build through, leadership programs like Girls on the Run, like empowerment, like Girl Scouts.
Totally agree with you, Angela. And we also have to acknowledge that this generation, this population, have the most access to information than ever. When you give a child an iPad, it's so much that they have at their fingertips now. And so being open and having conversations, because there are things that they are knowledgeable about at such a young age, we just have conversations. We have conversations and be as transparent as possible, but know that they have so much information at their hands at this point that, you know, we are where we are, but we have to, you know, help them form good dialogue, use that information in a good way, and not to be a harm to themselves or to others.
I feel like one area that Girls on the Run can make an impact, certainly acknowledging that we live in a different time, but also it's so important to really, think about how girls are spending their out of school time and who they're spending it with. And so I feel, passionate about bringing girls to every, nook and cranny of our community so that a girl can, after school, go to a place where she's exposed to positive role models, having great conversations, being physically active, building her self-confidence. We certainly don't have all the answers, but at least for that hour and 15 minutes, out of school time is spent in a positive way. And hopefully we'll just continue to build those social and emotional skills for the girls and open doors for the future.
Absolutely. And thank you all for all of your comments and input. I want to talk a little more about physical wellness too, and this idea of what, wellness looks like for our girls. We talked about mental and emotional a bit before, but what are the physical messages that they're getting, and how are all of you able to build those up?
Girls on the Run, we were kind of taking a look at some of the research over the past decade, and one of the interesting and staggering statistics that we found was that by about age 9, 10, that girls' physical activity levels were dropping, their self-confidence levels are dropping, and they would continue to decline into adolescence. And so, these are pre-COVID statistics. So where are we going to find ourselves, after we kind of get back to normal? And so our curriculum, there's the running component, because we feel so strongly that girls build self-confidence through accomplishment. And so ultimately, over the 8 to 10 weeks that the girls are with us, they're training for that end of season 5K. It's always a magical day for the girls. And it's not about how fast the girls go. It's not timed. It's not competitive. It's showing the girl at the beginning of the season they can set a goal, a physical activity goal that many of them think that they cannot accomplish by the end of the season. And then at the end, they are able to cross that finish line. And we're hoping that we can, inspire them to continue to set stretch goals, continue to stay physically active. And that plays such an important role in your self-confidence and mental health.
I think, to Megan's point, it is so critical that we arm our girls, and particularly girls of color. I'm just going to go start with that, with the idea that being physically active is going to lengthen and enhance the quality of your life. Coupled with that, you have to start talking about different body images, right? So somebody who may be African American or of color may have curves, may be not a size 8 or a 6. They might be 12 or 14 or 16, and are in great physical condition. And so I think it's important that we broaden and diversify our cultural icons. Serena Williams, love her. Our athletes like that, our WNBA athletes, a lot of our athletes who are not traditional size. I think it's important to expose our girls to the range of that and how you can be not only physically fit, but also mentally fit, because I think they tie those things together. And I think, just really access is so critical. And, if we recognize that, if you meet girls where they are, they may be in a place in a neighborhood where it's not safe to run or safe to bike or they may not have access to a pool. And so I think organizations like Girls on the Run, like Girl Scouts, like Empowerment, really think about how we can partner with YMCAs, and YWCAs to provide that access. And I think I heard a statistic. The statistic is still high for young Black girls and young Black boys about them not being able to swim. I think it was the statistic I heard was like 60%. still don't know how to swim. So really working with organizations that are focused on providing access and opportunity, and also, starting with the self-care aspect of it. There are so many folks in the Charlotte community. There's a huge yoga, Black woman yoga, positivity. Amplify and Activate is a great organization that talks about this holistic approach to young girls and women. So all of those things I think are important to the physical fitness.
Yes, self-care is definitely important from their ages through ours. And thank you for mentioning Amplify and Activate as well. Comment, I often talk to my girls about wellness having many components. This is mental, physical, and spiritual. And they say, thank you for touching on the importance of body image, and particularly our brown and Black girls. And that yoga organization was Amplify and Activate. So what are some of the issues that you all are hearing directly from the girls in the organization? What are they bringing to you? What are some of the things that we need to be paying attention to that might go unnoticed or under the radar?
Some of the things that we're hearing from our girls is they're struggling to build friendships. One of the things that we're really trying to help girls work on, especially at a young age, is how to build friendships, what does a healthy friendship look like, and how to resolve conflict when you have a conflict with your friend. And so it's been really neat to hear from parents and educators that if a conflict happens on the playground or in the classroom, they're seeing the girls actually use the strategies that they're learning at practice. So that's one area that I find that we're making a big impact, is really helping those girls build connections. And one silver lining of COVID for us, we had about 90% of our teams in school settings about a year ago. And then for the past year, it's probably been closer to 10. And so we have had teams in community locations where we're bringing girls together from many different neighborhoods, many different schools. We have homeschool students together, private school students together, just such a great mix. And these are connections and friendships that the girls would not have been able to make otherwise. And something that we certainly want to continue to focus on is having community teams that brings girls of all backgrounds together so they can build new friendships and relationships in and out of school.
I'm not a therapist, but what I have been hearing from girls, both from in a faith-based perspective and in organizations that I'm associated with, is there is such a huge sense of loss during this pandemic. So many girls have lost friends, grandparents, aunts, uncles, parents. And this whole sense of it goes back to what we started the conversation with about the impact on mental health. We still don't know the impact of what's going to happen with girls and the PTSD probably that they're experiencing. So I hope and continue that we continue to pay attention to what girls are saying and also what they're not saying. And continue to lift them up and support them, and not only them, but their parents as we go through this time.
With empowerment and just in personal conversations, just being in this remote learning has brought up learning challenges. So addressing that each student may learn differently. And what does that look like? That may not be working in a traditional school setting, but moving forward, how does a girl learn with all her senses, or just, how does she learn in a hybrid or in person versus just remote learning? Those conversations have been had and just really raises some great questions that hadn't been thought of before, how students are learning and may just need different paths of learning. And as well as this time being away from school and being more in front of just current events, the Black Lives Movement and social injustice has been a hot topic with our girls and will continue to be as they are brown and Black girls. How do they make it in this world? How do they succeed? What does their future look like? Those are real questions that they have asked us. And just looking at potential careers, things look different now as we are sitting in different offices and homes, what does the impact of careers and jobs for women look like post-pandemic? Or other conversations that we've had. So I would say those are the hot topics that that have been brought to light recently.
Thank you. And it's beautiful how this day brings so many topics and issues and concerns together. I was on the panel earlier that was thinking about the gender equity and pay gap, and how, girls are not encouraged to, negotiate and kind of challenge these barriers. And so there's another question about the talents and gifts. What are the talents and gifts that our girls have that we most overlook or undervalue? What should we be investing in rather than trying to fix? And thank you, Byron White, for that wonderful question.
Well, I'm going to jump right in here and Tiffany's laughing at me because she knows where I'm going. Having had the honor of leading an organization like Girl Scout in the Charlotte region, and partnering with great organizations, girl serving organizations. The number one thing that the regional community can do is get real serious about investing in girls for real. And I don't mean just the, program, donations. I mean, having some serious conversations about how we move resources to girls and to their parents, and to talk about those issues, not just from a perspective of, early childhood or teen pregnancy, but to look at the whole gamut. From 0 to 21, what are girls and young women experiencing, and how can we as a community come together and put dollars and investments around these issues? And I don't have to tell you, and everybody on this panel is real clear about the disparity that happens between girl focused organizations and boy focused organizations. And girls, and that's not only in Charlotte. This is not just a Charlotte issue. This is a national issue. There's been study after study after study that talks about how little, as from a philanthropic perspective, that we invest in women-based and girl-based organizations. So number one, let's get serious about putting money where our mouth is, because we do a great job at volunteering. We do an excellent job at volunteering, but we need time, talent, and resources.
Angela and I have had so many conversations about this. The Chutney report that was based on the Charlotte community mentioned the head of household, but did not associate the head of household as being a single mother or a female. And we know that is the reality of Charlotte, that the head of household mainly is a woman. And so as I go out into the community to have conversations to try to get resources and funding for empowerment, I have to remind people that these girls are our future. They will be the head of their households. They will be the ones taking care of their families. Make the investments now. And so that report, we can talk, that's another whole topic, but that report should really have been focused on girls and women in the Charlotte community, and what is the action plan to elevate them out of poverty, out of this community.
Completely agree with everything that you all have shared. And kind of on a slightly different note, one of the things that jumped out when the question came through was, what are the talents we're overlooking? And I feel like there's just a myriad of talents that we have yet to uncover. But one thing that we really focus on at Girls on the Run is just ensuring that coaches recognize that girls are not their behavior. And so if there is a behavior that's perceived as negative, that can often cause a coach or an individual to overlook other special talents and treasures that girls have. And so, what is behind the behavior is a question we often pose. What are the girls going through at home? What are their needs that are not being met, that is not allowing that girl to reach her full potential? And how can we work with the family, work with the girl, work with the school, work with the counselor to ensure that all of her needs are being met, so she truly has the ability to shine as bright as she can and succeed, in the school setting and beyond. So that's one thing I feel very passionately about at our coach training is really girls' behavior, what's behind it, and how we can support in a more constructive way.
And that's such a great segue to think about this idea of how girls' behaviors are seen as different. So often when girls are quiet, they're not able to get the support that they need academically, but it's when they're responding to something. If we think about Monique Morris's book Push Out, that talks about girls being disciplined for rolling eyes or responding in ways that are thought as, threatening. And we've seen even cases not too far from us where girls have been people have been physically assaulted in terms of regulating their bodies and behavior. And so often until there's an extreme case, what those needs are not recognized. And so really important for us to think about how we see girls where they're often very invisible. So thank you for that. And thank you, Tiffany, for putting the Leading on Opportunity report. So we have probably about 10 minutes left, and I want to think about additional means of support. There's a question from Christina Gullo-Smith who says, I work closely with first-year college students who are still under their parents' roof. Many of the girls struggle with mental health and helping their parents understand what they're struggling with. How do you work with girls who come from homes where mental health is still stigmatized? And that's a huge issue.
That's a huge issue in the communities of color. The Black community is still frowned upon some days on getting self-help therapy, that type of stuff. You just have to encourage that student to let them know that they are doing what's best for them. That's part of their self-care, part of their just growth as a person, that you may need to seek additional resources and help. And it is okay. And I think more and more, and hopefully as we come out of this pandemic, that it will be more normalized to seek help and to get the help that people need.
I would also offer to, mental health advocates like Erica Ellis Stewart over at the Mental Health Central Carolina is a great resource to plug families and children in, and particularly girls. And there are a number of Black therapists in the area. They have an organization which is escaping me right now, but there are a number of organizations and therapists who do this work and who work with girls in specific, girls of color in specific, and also their families. I also think that this is a space in where those of us who support, are involved in, believe in faith-based institutions, this is a place where you can advocate from that perspective, because a lot of that disconnect comes from kind of old generational thinking. You pray it all away. Well, yes, you do, and you also. So I think thinking about making sure that we are advocates, each of us are advocates for the work. Trying to marry up the professionals in the work, and also trying our best to make sure that there's access and not being looked at as less than because you are reaching out for help.
We recognize that Girls on the Run, we're not mental health professionals, and we can't expect our coaches to be mental health professionals as well. So this is where, to your point, Angela, relying on other nonprofits, collaborating, making sure that we're well connected to those resources in our community, so that when we need to reach out and we need to lean on the experts, we know who to go to. And then we also, just the school counselors are so tremendous. And being able to have strong connections with them, strong relationships, and an open line of communication as an organization that works primarily, in the school setting is so important for us, and making sure that we are, well connected, we know who to talk to, and then can connect our girls and coaches with the resources that they need.
Great, thank you all. Let's also think, because we're having this conversation through the Women and Girls Research Alliance, what is the influence of women's narratives and even your own narratives on the work you do and on the support for girls in the Charlotte and greater community?
That's such a deep question. I kept waiting for my panelists to jump in.
I was like, who's smiling first?
let me make sure I understand your question. What's the women's narrative? What's our own narrative in this space?
Right. What's your own narrative, but also what are the influences of women's narratives on
Yeah.
girls' narratives?
I think representation is so critical and so key. It was somebody that said, children can't see what, they can't be what they can't see. I think it's imperative upon all of us across demographics, age groups, to pay it forward. And if we're speaking in specific, for me, because my way was paid forward, right? So someone came before me. And so when I've found myself in positions and having positional power, I take advantage of it to bring others along. And so those who have worked with me, who've worked for me, beside me, and as a team know that, my mantra is, I want to help you be the leader that you want to be, not the leader that I think you should be. I should quote myself and tell my daughter that, because she's not gonna believe I just said that out loud in front of everybody. But it is important to create those spaces for others to come through, and it is not that is something that it's not a one and done. You have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And then I think the next step after that is, once you're helping bring people along, then we all have a responsibility to support those folks so that they don't leave. Right? That is the absolute worst consequence, that we help develop, nurture, and then engage and retain young women, girls, women in the whole talent pool and support structure.
And I'll say personally, one of the things that drives a lot of the work that I do, and why I've focused on kind of mission-driven work since college, was I was the first female in my family to go to college. So from a small town, and my mother and grandmother, just really believed in me, even though they had not gone down that path themselves. They were determined that I was going to college. And so, and I recognized that I did not get there and I was not successful on my own. There were so many people that supported me in many different ways that allowed me to be successful and to be really sitting here talking with all of you today. And so, to your point, Angela, one thing that I really want to focus on as someone that has found herself in a position where I'm managing a team, is how important it is to support women in the workplace, pay equity. That again, it's why are we not talking about women being paid their worth? And so just making the best environment for those that work within the organization, and specifically those that work in my orbit, and supporting them in every possible way that I can, both personally and professionally.
At Empowerment, even though we're doing big things behind the scenes, we are a very small crew of 5 women, but we act like an army of 100 women. And during the pandemic, working alongside of women of color, working alongside my board that is majority female, and just serving the girls was a very emotional yet rewarding time for me. When I saw our girls marching in the Black Lives Matter protest, I saw our girls start businesses on Etsy with creating their own masks, or really great masks for their family members and their neighbors. Girls who started their own nonprofits and wanted to give back to the community because they saw that their neighbors, that their circles were experiencing the pandemic firsthand, made me grateful for empowerment and for the work that we do, and that the seeds that we have planted was starting to sprout. And to see that in a year where it was almost impossible, we didn't know if we were going to survive, but we did. But to see that in a year that was so life-changing for all of us was amazing, was simply amazing. And so every day I'm grateful for working for girls and women, and working alongside girls and women, and being in a space like this to have deeper conversations on how to better the girls and women of this community.
Thank you. There's so many powerful comments that came out of that, how we nurture, engage, retain who came before us, who's coming after us, and how we support this work. And I want to remind attendees to complete the survey. if you are able to, following the panel discussion. But I would be remiss in these last few minutes if I didn't ask what support your organizations and community organizations and you need to support our girls. We talked about those investment, but often it's thought that, okay, the super women, the super girls, they're good, they got it, they're all right. But what other support is needed for our girls and for organizations that support them?
I think, what is it folks say? Normalize self-care, right? I grew up in the generation where you had to be successful is that you had to do it all. And if you were struggling, too bad, so sad for you, just keep going. So my personal challenge and opportunity, I think, is to normalize self-care and to be vulnerable, be willing to be vulnerable and say that you need it. So if I'm in a position to do that and ask for help when necessary, you may not always get it, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't ask, then maybe that helps somebody else do the same thing.
That's great. Other takeaways and areas of support.
I really want to, we're spending really the next year rebuilding our organization and focusing on how we serve our girls and what that looks like. But I think that, we're finding that we can't be successful without collaborating with other people in our community, without having conversations like the one that we're having here today, having conversations around our dinner table, making intentional reach outs to other girl serving organizations. So that's, kind of personally what I want to focus on in the next years. I think our organization will build back stronger if we do it with many different voices informing what we do and how we do it.
And for me, my ask to the community is to truly create opportunities, experiences, and exposure for girls and women. Make that happen. It doesn't have to be several conversations. Just make space, make a way, and provide the resources and the tools behind it for a girl or a woman to sit at that table or sit at that job or that position, whatever it may be. I think now is the time that we just have to do. So creating just more opportunities, experiences, and paths for our girls and women to succeed.
I love that. Truly create opportunities and paths for girls and women to succeed. And I think that's a great place to start to wrap up. Our survey is in the link. Are there any other final words that you all want to send our panel attendees away with?
I think just know that we are so blessed to have so many talented young girls in this community, to continue to reach out and lift them up because they are our future. It is imperative that we support them and bring them along and make sure that they have everything that they need. I would just thank you for the opportunity to participate on the panel to lift this up. And I hope that we continue to lift this up.
It's been wonderful being here with all of you today. It's hard work, but it's rewarding work. It's the best work. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share more about Girls on the Run and the work that we're doing, and look forward to staying in conversation with all of you.
Thank you to Dr. Michelle Meggs for this opportunity and for us to be together and to have some great dialogue.
And we want to thank each of you, Angela Woods, Maghan Knight, and Tiffany Allen, for being here, sharing your contributions, and the work is ongoing. Someone asked if resources can be shared in this dialogue, and we can do that. So thank you all, and thank you to the Women and Girls Research Alliance for allowing space for this conversation.